When I moved into my first house, I was excited to finally have my own space. It was a small rental in a quiet neighborhood, and I spent the first few days unpacking and settling in. Like most people, I had accumulated a lot of stuff over the years, and I decided to sell some of it to make room. I listed a few items on Facebook Marketplace, including an old gaming console, a desk, and a set of kitchen appliances I no longer needed. The gaming console was the most expensive item I listed, priced at $250. It was in great condition, and I figured it would sell quickly. For the first couple of days, I got a few messages from people asking if it was still available, but none of them followed through. Then, a guy named Mark messaged me. His profile picture was a blurry photo of a dog, and his account was private. I couldn't see much about him except that we had two mutual friends, both of whom were people I barely knew from high school. Mark seemed polite at first. He asked if the console was still available, and when I said yes, he immediately asked when he could pick it up. I told him I was free that evening, and he said he could come by around 9 p.m. I thought it was a little late, but I didn't want to lose the sale, so I agreed. He didn't try to haggle on the price, which I found surprising, but I figured he really wanted the console. Before we finalized the time, I decided to ask if he was the same Mark who used to hang out with a guy I knew from high school. He didn't respond right away, and when he finally did, he just said, "Yeah, that's me." Something about the way he answered felt off, but I brushed it aside. I sent him my address, and he said he'd text me when he was on his way. The rest of the evening was uneventful. I cleaned up a bit and waited for his message. Around 8:45, I got a text from an unknown number saying, "Heading over now." I assumed it was Mark, so I replied, "Great, see you soon." When I didn't hear back, I started to feel a little uneasy, but I told myself I was just overthinking it. At 9:15, I got another text, "I'm here." I looked out the window and saw a car parked across the street. It was an older model sedan, dark in color, and I couldn't see who was inside. I texted back, "Do you need help carrying it out?" But he didn't reply. I waited a minute, then decided to call the number. The call was rejected almost immediately, and then I got another text, "Come outside." At this point, I was starting to feel nervous. I texted back, "I can't carry it by myself. Can you come to the door?" He replied, "Nah, just come out." Something about the way he was texting didn't sit right with me. It didn't match the polite tone he had used earlier on Facebook. I decided to call one of the mutual friends we had on Facebook to ask if they knew him. The friend, a girl named Sarah, picked up and immediately said, "Wait, Mark, that's not his account. Someone's been using his pictures to catfish people." My stomach dropped. I looked out the window again, and this time I noticed movement near the side of my house. Someone was standing in the shadows, partially hidden by the bushes. I froze, unsure of what to do. Then, the car across the street honked its horn, and the person near the bushes quickly ran back to the car. They got in, and the car sped off down the street. I locked all the doors and windows and stayed up the rest of the night, too scared to sleep. The next day, I reported the fake account to Facebook, but it had already been deleted. I also called the police to report what had happened, but they didn't seem very interested since nothing actually happened to me. A few days later, I got a text from another unknown number. It said, "We know where you live. Watch your back." I blocked the number and reported it to the police again, but I never heard anything more about it. Since then, I've been extra cautious about selling things online. I never give out my address anymore, and I always meet buyers in public places. Even though nothing happened that night, the thought of what could have happened still haunts me. It was a few years ago when I decided to sell an old guitar I had lying around. It wasn't anything special, just a beginner's acoustic guitar that I hadn't touched in years. I figured I could get maybe $100 for it, so I listed it on a local buy and sell app. Within a day, I got a message from someone named Kyle, who seemed interested. His profile picture was just a blurry photo of a car, and his account didn't have much activity, but I didn't think much of it. He offered $80, and I agreed. We set up a time for him to come by my apartment that evening. When the time came, I got a message from him saying he was running late. I told him it was fine, but as the minutes ticked by, I started to feel a little uneasy. It was already dark outside, and I didn't love the idea of meeting a stranger at night. Around 9:30, he messaged me again, saying he was outside. I looked out my window and saw a car idling on the street. I grabbed the guitar and went to the door, but when I opened it, I noticed there were two people standing there instead of one. I asked, "Are you Kyle?" And one of the guys nodded. The other guy, who was taller and wearing a hoodie, just stood there silently. I told them I wasn't comfortable with both of them coming inside, and Kyle said, "No problem, we'll just check it out here." I handed him the guitar, and he started inspecting it. The taller guy kept glancing around, like he was checking out my apartment building. Something about the whole situation felt off, so I told them I had to grab something inside and quickly shut the door. I locked it and peeked through the peephole. They were still standing there, talking to each other. Then I heard one of them try the doorknob. My heart started racing. I backed away from the door and grabbed my phone to call the police, but before I could dial, I heard a loud bang. They were trying to kick the door in. I ran to my bedroom and locked the door, my hands shaking as I finally called 911. I whispered to the dispatcher what was happening, and she told me to stay on the line. I could hear them yelling outside, and then another loud crash came from the living room. They had broken a window. I could hear them moving around inside, their footsteps heavy and fast. I stayed as quiet as I could, hiding in the corner of my bedroom. The dispatcher assured me that officers were on their way, but those minutes felt like hours. I heard one of them try the bedroom door, but thankfully it was locked. They didn't try to force it open, and after a few more minutes, I heard them leave. I stayed on the line with the dispatcher until I heard the sound of sirens outside. The police arrived and searched the apartment. The living room was a mess. Drawers pulled out, furniture overturned. They had taken a few things, like my laptop and some cash I had in a drawer, but thankfully they didn't get into my bedroom. The officers told me I was lucky I had locked myself in and called them when I did. Later, I gave the police the details of the account and the car I had seen outside. It turned out the account was fake, and the car had been stolen. They never caught the guys, and I never got my stuff back, but I was just grateful nothing worse had happened. After that, I swore I'd never sell anything online again, especially not from my home. I was browsing Facebook Marketplace one evening, looking for a used laptop. I didn't need anything fancy, just something cheap and functional for basic tasks. After scrolling for a while, I came across a listing for a MacBook Air. The post was vague, just a couple of pictures of the laptop and a description that said, "Like new, works perfectly, $400. It seemed like a great deal, so I messaged the seller. His name was Greg, and he responded quickly. He told me the laptop was in excellent condition, barely used, and he was selling it because he upgraded to a newer model. He even sent me a video of the laptop booting up, which made it seem legit. Greg seemed friendly and professional over text. He told me he preferred to meet in public places for safety, which I appreciated. He suggested meeting at a coffee shop about 30 minutes from where I lived. I agreed, and we set the meeting for 7:30 that evening. I asked my roommate Sarah if she wanted to come with me. She was hesitant at first, but eventually agreed when I promised to buy her coffee. We left around 7 and got to the coffee shop a little early. It was a small, quiet place in a suburban area, and there were only a few people inside. I texted Greg to let him know we had arrived, and he replied, "I'm running a little late, but I'll be there in 10 minutes. Sarah and I ordered drinks and sat by the window, waiting. 15 minutes passed, then 20, and still no sign of Greg. I texted him again, and he apologized, saying he was stuck in traffic but would be there soon. I was starting to get annoyed, but I figured I'd already come this far, so I might as well wait. Finally, Greg texted me again, saying he had just pulled into the parking lot but couldn't find a spot. He asked if I could come outside to meet him. I looked out the window and saw a car idling near the back of the lot. It was a dark sedan, but I couldn't see the driver. I told Sarah I'd be right back and stepped outside. As I walked toward the car, the driver rolled down the window slightly. I could barely see his face, but he waved me over and said, "Hey, sorry about the wait. Can you come around to the passenger side? I've got the laptop here." Something about the situation felt off. The parking lot was poorly lit, and the car was parked far from the other vehicles. I hesitated, then told him I'd prefer to do the exchange inside the coffee shop. He paused for a moment, then said, "I can't leave the car running here. Just come grab it real quick." My gut was screaming at me to turn around, but I didn't want to seem rude or paranoid. I took a step closer, but then I noticed something strange. There was movement in the back seat. It was subtle, like someone shifting or ducking down. That was enough for me. I quickly said, "Actually, I think I'll pass. Thanks anyway," and turned to walk back to the coffee shop. As I did, the car door opened, and a man stepped out. He was tall, wearing a hoodie, and he started calling after me. "Wait, come back. It's fine, I've got it right here." I didn't even look back. I rushed inside and told Sarah we needed to leave immediately. She could tell I was shaken, so she didn't ask questions. We grabbed our drinks and headed for the car. As we were pulling out of the parking lot, I noticed the dark sedan following us. My heart was racing as I tried to stay calm. I told Sarah to call the police, but she said we should just drive to the nearest station instead. I took a few random turns, hoping to lose the car, but it stayed right behind us. Finally, I spotted a gas station with a few cars parked outside and pulled in. The sedan slowed down as it passed, but didn't stop. I watched as it disappeared down the road. We waited at the gas station for a while, just to be safe, before heading home. I blocked Greg's number and reported the listing on Facebook Marketplace. To this day, I have no idea what his real intentions were, but I'm glad I trusted my instincts and got out of there. Sarah and I still talk about that night sometimes, and it always gives me chills to think about how close I might have been to something terrible.